The Empire had conquered 17 star systems. They had crushed dozens of species under their boots and taken everything worth taking. For 800 years, no one had stood against them and lived to tell the story. Admiral Al had served the Empire for 3 centuries, and in all that time he had never known defeat. He did not expect to know it now. His fleet hung in the darkness of space like a swarm of metal insects. 300 warships, each one bristling with weapons that had burned cities and cracked planets. 90,000 soldiers waited in those ships, eager for another conquest. They had heard rumors about the species that lived in this part of the galaxy. Small creatures, soft skin, short lives, easy prey. "Admiral," said Subcommander, stepping closer to his command chair, "we are receiving a transmission." Al waved one of his forearms lazily. "Put it through." The message filled the bridge. It came in dozens of languages, repeating over and over. The voice was calm and clear, speaking words that made several officers shift nervously at their stations. "You are approaching Terran space. Turn back. This is your only warning." Silence fell over the bridge. Al let out a long, rumbling laugh that shook his massive chest. The sound echoed off the metal walls, and soon other officers joined in, though some of their laughter sounded forced. "Terran space," Al said, his voice dripping with amusement. "They give themselves such grand names, as if marking lines in the void will stop us." Did not laugh. She stood with her hands clasped behind her back, her yellow eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Admiral, I must advise caution. Our intelligence on this species is incomplete. Every probe we have sent into their territory has simply vanished. We do not know what happened to them." "Vanished?" Al snorted. "Probably flew into an asteroid. These Terrans are clearly primitive if they think a simple warning will frighten the Empire." "With respect, Admiral, we have almost no information about their military capabilities. Their ships, their weapons, their numbers, we are flying blind." Al turned his massive head to look at her. His eyes were cold and hard, the eyes of a predator who had never met anything he could not kill. "I have conquered species that breathed fire. I have crushed civilizations that lived in the hearts of stars. Do you truly believe these soft little creatures pose any threat to us?" Lowered her gaze. "No, Admiral, forgive me." "Your caution is noted," Al said, turning back to but unnecessary. We will cross into their space, we will take what we want, and we will add another conquered species to our glorious history. Navigation, set course for the boundary." The fleet moved forward as one, 300 ships advancing toward the invisible line that marked Terran territory. As they drew closer, Al could see the beacons that floated in the void. Strange devices, each one broadcasting that same warning message over and over. They were small things, barely worth noticing. "Primitive," Al muttered. "They truly think these toys will stop us." The first ship crossed the boundary, then another, then another. Soon the entire fleet had passed the line of beacons and nothing happened. No weapons fire, no enemy ships, nothing but empty space stretching out before them. Al smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "You see, nothing but empty threats. These Terrans are cowards who hide behind warnings they cannot enforce." But even as he spoke, something changed. Every beacon behind them went dark at the same moment, as if someone had flipped a switch. The endless warning messages stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse than any alarm. Then a new transmission arrived. A single sentence imperfect, spoken in a voice that carried no fear, no anger, only cold certainty. "You were warned." Felt her blood turn to ice. She looked at the tactical display, searching for any sign of enemy ships, but there was nothing. Just darkness and stars and the terrible silence of space. "Admiral," she said quietly, "perhaps we should consider." "We consider nothing," Al snapped. "We advance. If they want to play games with their little messages, let them. When we find their worlds, we will burn them. When we find their people, we will enslave them. That is what happens to species that threaten the Empire." The fleet continued forward, pushing deeper into Terran space. Hours passed. Nothing appeared on their sensors. No ships, no stations, no planets, just empty space that seemed to stretch on forever. Some of the younger officers began to relax. Perhaps the Terrans really had been bluffing. Perhaps they had fled at the sight of the mighty fleet. Perhaps this would be the easiest conquest in the Empire's history. Al leaned back in his chair, already composing the report he would send to the High Council. Another species brought to heel. Another territory added to the Empire. Another victory for Admiral Al, the greatest military commander that had ever produced. He did not notice the single dot that appeared at the edge of the sensor display. He did not see his eyes widen as she studied the readings. He did not hear the whispered prayers that some of the crew began to mutter under their breath. But he would learn, they would all learn. Far away on the edge of Terran space, Defense Station Aegis 7 floated in the darkness. It was not a large station, but it did not need to be. Its purpose was simple: watch and wait and warn. Commander Daniel stood in the command center, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes fixed on the holographic display that showed the fleet moving through Terran territory. He was a tall man with gray at his temples and calm brown eyes that had seen too much to be surprised by anything. 300 ships, said Lieutenant Amy Santos from her station. Roughly 90,000 enemy combatants. They crossed the boundary 6 hours ago and are continuing on their current heading. I see them, said quietly. Sir, should we alert High Command? Nodded slowly. Send the message, standard protocol, and activate the Sentinel protocol. Santos hesitated for just a moment. The Sentinel protocol was not something they activated lightly. It meant that diplomacy had failed. It meant that the time for warnings had passed. It meant that somewhere in the darkness of space, something terrible was about to happen. Yes, sir, she said, and began entering the commands. Watch the enemy fleet on his display. 300 ships, 90,000 soldiers. They thought they were predators entering the territory of prey. They thought they were the hunters. They were wrong. Opened a channel to Terran High Command and spoke 3 simple words that would change the galaxy forever. We have guests. Then he sat down in his chair and waited. Somewhere out there, the response was already coming, and when it arrived, they would learn the truth that so many species had learned before them. Terran space was not a place you entered. It was a place you died. 6 hours had passed since the fleet crossed into Terran space. 6 hours of nothing but darkness and silence. Admiral Al had grown comfortable in that silence. He had begun to believe that the Terrans were cowards who had fled at the approach of his mighty armada. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The censor's officer, a young named, was the first to see it. His screen flickered once, twice, and then showed something that should not have been there. A single contact appearing from nowhere, moving at speeds that made no sense. Admiral said, his voice cracking. Contact, single ship, it just appeared on our sensors. Al leaned forward in his chair. One ship, where did it come from? I do not know, Admiral. It was not there and then it was. It is moving toward us at incredible speed. Show me. The main changed to show the approaching vessel. It was smaller than Al's flagship, perhaps half the size. Its design was strange and angular, covered in plates of dark metal that seemed to drink in the light of distant stars. It moved through space like a predator, smooth and silent and deadly. One ship, Al said, and there was uncertainty in his voice now. They send one ship against 300. Perhaps it is a messenger, suggested. Perhaps they wish to negotiate. Then they will beg for mercy and I will decide whether to grant it. Al straightened in his chair, regaining his confidence. Open a channel. The communication officer worked at his station. Channel open, Admiral. Before Al could speak, a voice came through the speakers. It was a female voice, calm and clear, speaking perfect as if she had spoken it all her life. This is Captain Laura Bishop of the Terran Defense Force vessel Vanguard. You have entered Terran territory in violation of clearly marked boundaries. You were warned. You ignored that warning. I am offering you one final chance to withdraw your forces immediately. This offer expires in 60 seconds. Al stared at the one small ship crewed by these tiny soft creatures, and they dared to threaten the Empire. The insult was beyond anything he had ever experienced. Captain Bishop, he said, letting anger fill his voice, I am Admiral Al of the Empire. I have conquered more worlds than you have years of life. I have 300 warships and 90,000 soldiers under my command. You have one ship. Do you truly believe you can stop us? There was a pause. When the voice came back, it sounded almost sad. Admiral, I am trying to save your life. I am trying to save the lives of everyone in your fleet. Please, turn around and go home. Tell your empire that Terran space is not for them. This does not have to end in death. You dare threaten me, Al roared. I will crush your little ship and hang your body from the walls of my palace. Fleet command to all ships, destroy that vessel. The response was immediate. Weapons fire erupted from dozens of warships, a storm of energy beams and missiles that should have reduced the Terran vessel to atoms. The darkness of space lit up with the fury of the attack. But when the light faded, the Vanguard was still there. It had not even tried to dodge. It had simply taken everything that could throw at it, and it had not been scratched. Admiral whispered, his voice filled with terror, their shields. Our weapons did nothing to their shields. Captain Bishop's voice returned, and now there was no sadness in it, only cold, hard resolve. Very well, Admiral, you have made your choice. The Vanguard moved. It did not fly toward them, it seemed to jump, covering the distance between them in the blink of an eye, and then it opened fire. Al had never seen weapons like these. Beams of light that cut through shields as if they were made of paper. Missiles that moved so fast they were invisible until they struck. Projectiles that punched through armor like it was not even there. Ships began to die. The first to fall was a heavy cruiser, one of the pride of the fleet. It exploded in a ball of fire, taking 800 crew members with it. Then another ship died. Then another. Then 3 more at once. Return fire, Al screamed. All ships concentrate fire on that vessel. They tried. Every ship in the fleet that could target the Vanguard opened fire. Thousands of weapons systems unleashed everything they had at the single Terran ship. It should have been enough to crack a planet. The Vanguard danced through the storm of fire like it was nothing. It moved in ways that should have been impossible, turning and spinning and accelerating at speeds that would have killed any crew. And all the while it kept firing, kept killing, kept teaching them a lesson they would never forget. In 5 minutes, 40 ships were gone. 40 ships reduced to burning wreckage, their crews dead or dying in the cold vacuum of space. And the Vanguard had not been touched. Al sat frozen in his command chair. He could not move. He could not think. He could not understand what was happening. This was not possible. This was not how war worked. One ship could not defeat an entire fleet. But it was happening anyway. Admiral said, and her voice was shaking, we must retreat, we must. Retreat, Al whispered. The word felt foreign in his mouth. He had never said it before. He had never needed to. If we stay, we die, said. All of us, please, Admiral, give the order. Al looked at the. More ships were dying. The Vanguard was moving through his fleet like a predator through a herd of prey animals, killing with terrible efficiency. His proud armada was being torn apart by a single ship crewed by creatures he had thought were weak and primitive. All ships, he said, his voice hollow, retreat, full speed, get us out of here. The fleet tried to run. Ships turned and accelerated, desperate to escape the monster that was killing them. But Captain Bishop's voice returned one final time, and her words froze the blood in Al's veins. Admiral, you misunderstand. You crossed into our territory. We do not do retreats, we do lessons. More Terran ships appeared from the darkness. Not large vessels like the Vanguard, but smaller ships, fast and deadly, moving in packs like wolves hunting wounded prey. They came from every direction, cutting off escape routes, surrounding the scattered fleet. Al understood then. He understood what the Terrans were doing. They were not just fighting a battle. They were sending a message written in fire and blood and the screams of dying. And the galaxy would hear that message clearly. On the bridge of the Vanguard, Captain Laura Bishop watched her tactical display with calm eyes. She took no pleasure in this. She never did. But they had been warned. They had been given every chance to turn back. They had chosen this. All units, she said quietly, weapons free. Leave survivors, leave witnesses. Let them go home and tell their empire what happens when you enter Terran space. The hunt began. The fleet scattered like frightened animals. 300 ships that had entered Terran space with dreams of conquest now fled in every direction, desperate to escape the nightmare that had fallen upon them. But there was no escape. The Terrans had made sure of that. Lieutenant Commander Cole sat in the cockpit of his strike fighter, leading a wing of 12 ships through the chaos of the battlefield. His voice was calm as he spoke to his pilots, as if this were just another training exercise. Bravo Wing, take the group heading towards Sector 7. Charlie Wing, you have the cruisers trying to run for the boundary. Remember, we want survivors. Disable, do not destroy unless necessary. Copy that, Commander, came the response from his wingman. Though I have to say, this is almost too easy. Cole smiled slightly. Stay focused. Easy fights are where you get sloppy. His fighter banked hard and accelerated toward a cluster of fleeing destroyers. They saw him coming and opened fire, but their weapons were slow and clumsy compared to what he was flying. He danced through their fire without effort, his ship responding to his thoughts almost before he had them. A single burst from his main cannons disabled the first destroyer's engines. Another burst took out the second ship's weapons systems. The third tried to ram him in desperation, but Cole simply moved aside and let it drift past, then crippled it with a shot to its power core. 3 ships disabled in less than 10 seconds. The crews would survive, floating helpless in the void until someone came to collect them. That was the point. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Terran ships moved through the fleet with terrifying precision, crippling vessels rather than destroying them. It would have been easier to simply kill everyone. It would have been faster. But Captain Bishop had been clear. They needed witnesses. On the bridge of the flagship, Admiral Al watched his empire die. The tactical display showed the carnage in cold, simple numbers. Ships destroyed, 87. Ships disabled, 112. Ships still fighting, 0. The battle, if it could be called that, had lasted less than an hour. Admiral said quietly, our weapons are offline. Our engines are failing. We cannot run. Al did not respond. He sat in his command chair like a statue, his 4 arms hanging limp at his sides, his eyes fixed on nothing. Everything he had believed about the universe had been wrong. They were not the greatest power in the galaxy. They were not the ultimate predators. They were prey, and they had wandered into the territory of something far more dangerous than themselves. Admiral tried again. What are your orders? Orders? Al laughed, and there was madness in the sound. What orders can I give? We are already dead. We simply have not stopped moving yet. A new alert sounded. Proximity warning. Something was approaching the flagship, something small and fast. Checked her display and felt her heart stop. Boarding craft, she said. They are coming to take the ship. The Terran shuttle attached to the flagship's hull with a sound like thunder. Somewhere in the lower decks, an explosion tore through metal, and then there were new sounds. Gunfire, screaming, the heavy footsteps of armored soldiers moving through corridors built for creatures twice their size. Sergeant led the Marine squad through the flagship with brutal efficiency. The alien soldiers they encountered were big, much bigger than any human. They had claws and teeth and natural armor that should have made them terrifying opponents. They died anyway. Squad moved like a single organism, each Marine knowing exactly where the others were and what they were doing. They did not hesitate. They did not show fear. They had trained for this their entire lives, and humanity had been training for war since the first cave dweller picked up a rock. Contact left, one of her Marines called out. Neutralize. A burst of gunfire and another soldier fell. They pushed forward, stepping over bodies, moving ever closer to the bridge. They fought back. They were warriors, after all, bred for battle over countless generations, but they had never faced anything like this. The humans were smaller and weaker, but they were also faster and smarter and absolutely relentless. Every tactic they tried was countered before it could begin. Every trap they set was avoided or turned against them. In 20 minutes the flagship was secured. 90 soldiers were dead. The rest had surrendered, had not lost a single Marine. The bridge doors exploded inward and the Marines poured through. Al and his officers did not resist. What would be the point? They had seen what these humans could do. Fighting them was not courage. It was suicide. Secured the bridge and then stood aside as Captain Laura Bishop walked through the doors. She was not a large woman. By standards, she was tiny, barely reaching the chest of the smallest officer present, but something in her eyes made even Al look away. Admiral Al, Bishop said, her voice carrying easily through the silent bridge. I am Captain Laura Bishop of the Terran Defense Force. Your fleet has been defeated. Your ship is ours. Your soldiers are dead or captured. Do you understand your situation? Al forced himself to meet her gaze. I understand that you are monsters, demons from the darkest pits of space. Bishop smiled, and there was no warmth in it. We are not monsters, Admiral. We are humans, and I am going to tell you something that you will remember for the rest of your life. Are you listening? Al said nothing. We did not start expanding into space because we were peaceful, Bishop said. We started because we ran out of things to fight on Earth. For thousands of years, we fought each other. We developed weapons that could crack continents and poisons that could kill worlds. We nearly destroyed ourselves a dozen times, but we survived. We always survive. And now we are here in the stars, and we have brought everything we learned with us. She stepped closer to him, and Al found himself pressing back into his chair, trying to get away from this tiny creature who frightened him more than anything he had ever encountered. Go home, Bishop said. Take your survivors, what few remain, and go home. Tell your empire what happened here today. Tell them about the fleet that was destroyed by a handful of ships. Tell them about the soldiers who fell to enemies half their size. And tell them this, Admiral, because this is the most important part. She leaned in close, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. Terran space is death. Anyone who enters without permission will not leave alive. We do not negotiate. We do not compromise. We do not show mercy to those who threaten our people. This is the only warning your empire will ever receive. Make sure they understand it. She turned and walked away, leaving Al sitting in the ruins of everything he had ever believed. The lesson had been taught. Now it was time for the galaxy to learn. The journey home took 4 months. 4 months of crawling through space in damaged ships with failing systems and broken crews. 4 months for Admiral Al to sit alone in his quarters and think about everything that had happened. 4 months for the truth to slowly eat away at his soul. They had entered Terran space with 300 warships and 90,000 soldiers. They left with 47 crippled vessels and barely 2,000 survivors. The humans had given them just enough power to limp home, just enough supplies to keep them alive. It was not mercy. It was a message. When the fleet finally reached Prime, the of the Empire, crowds gathered to watch them arrive. They expected a triumphant return, a parade of captured enemies and stolen treasures. Instead, They saw the broken remains of the greatest military force their civilization had ever assembled. Al was summoned before the High Council the same day he landed. The council chamber was a vast space of polished stone and golden light, designed to intimidate visitors with the power and majesty of the Empire. Al had stood in this chamber many times before, always as a hero, always as a conqueror. Today he stood as something else entirely. The 7 members of the High Council sat on raised platforms, looking down at him with cold eyes. Counselor, the oldest and most powerful among them, spoke first. Admiral Al, you were sent to bring a primitive species to heal. You were given the finest fleet in our history. You were expected to return with victory. Instead, you return with defeat. Explain yourself. Al stood straight, though every bone in his body wanted to collapse. Honored Council, I have no excuses. I underestimated the enemy. I ignored warnings that should have been heeded. The fault is mine. The fault is yours, agreed. But that does not explain what happened. How did one species, unknown to us, destroy the pride of the military? They are not unknown, Al said quietly. They simply chose to remain hidden until we forced them to reveal themselves. They call themselves humans from a planet called Earth, and they are the most dangerous creatures I have ever encountered. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Counselor, the youngest member of the council, leaned forward with anger in her eyes. Dangerous, they are small and soft and weak. Our soldiers are twice their size. Our ships outnumbered them 100 to 1. How can you call them dangerous? Because I watched them kill 80,000 of our soldiers in less than an hour, Al replied, his voice flat and dead. Because I saw their weapons cut through our shields like they were not there. Because their smallest fighter craft was faster and more maneuverable than our fastest ships. Because when they boarded my flagship, a squad of 20 humans killed 90 of our best warriors without taking a single loss. Silence fell over the chamber. They are not like us, Al continued. They are not like any species we have conquered. They did not reach the stars because they were peaceful. They reached the stars because they nearly destroyed themselves in wars among their own kind. For thousands of years, they fought and killed and developed weapons of unimaginable power. They are a species that was forged in violence, and they have brought that violence to the cosmos. Counselor's face was pale. You are saying we cannot defeat them. I am saying that if we try, we will die, all of us. They let us go, Counselor. They could have killed every one of us, but they chose to send us home instead. Do you know why? Because they wanted us to deliver a message. They wanted us to tell you what we saw. They wanted you to understand that Terran space is death, and anyone who enters it will not return. This is madness, Counselor shouted. We are the Empire, we have conquered the galaxy, we do not cower before primitives. Then send another fleet, Al said simply. Send 10 fleets, send every ship we have. It will not matter. They will destroy them all and then they will come here to this world and they will end us. Is that what you want? The chamber fell silent again. Al looked at the faces of the council members and saw the same fear that had gripped him on the bridge of his flagship. They did not want to believe him. They could not accept that the universe was not what they thought it was, but deep down, they knew he was telling the truth. The story spread quickly. Within days, everyone on Prime knew what had happened. Within weeks, the news had reached every corner of the Empire. Within months, it had traveled beyond space to the dozens of species they had conquered over the centuries. The humans became legends. Stories were told in whispered voices about the monsters from the spiral arm. Some said they were demons made of metal and fire. Others said they were ghosts who could appear and disappear at will. Still others said they were the universe's punishment for the sins of the... But the enslaved species told different stories. They spoke of liberators waiting in the darkness. They dreamed of a species powerful enough to stand against their conquerors. They prayed that one day, the humans might come and set them free. On a neutral trading station far from any empire's territory, Ambassador met with representatives from a dozen different species. He was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a gentle voice, nothing like the terrifying warriors the galaxy had heard about. But everyone in the room knew what his people were capable of. "Let me be clear," said, his hands folded on the table before him. "Humanity has no interest in conquest. We have no desire to rule other species or take their territory. We want peace. We want trade. We want friendship." "Then why did you destroy the fleet?" asked a small, fur-covered creature named El, representative of the people. "Because they entered our space after being warned not to," replied. "Because they came with weapons and soldiers and the intention to enslave us. We will not apologize for defending ourselves, but we will also not attack anyone who respects our boundaries." "And if we wish to trade with you," El asked, "if we wish to establish diplomatic relations, then you will find us to be excellent partners. Humanity has much to offer: medical technology, agricultural advances, defensive systems. We share freely with those who come to us in friendship." Paused. "But our territory is absolute. Those who respect the boundary will find us generous. Those who do not will find us deadly. There is no middle ground." The representatives looked at each other. For centuries, they had lived under the shadow of the Empire, always fearing, always submitting. Now there was something else in the galaxy, something that made even the afraid. "We accept," El said quietly, "the wish to establish formal relations with humanity." One by one, the other representatives nodded. A new era was beginning. The balance of power in the galaxy was shifting, and at the center of it all were the humans, watching and waiting, ready to be friends to those who earned it and death to those who deserved it. The message had been delivered. Now the galaxy would learn what it meant. 5 years passed, and the galaxy changed. The Empire still existed, but it was not the same. The conquests had stopped. The fleet stayed home. The species they had enslaved began to whisper of rebellion, and for the first time in 800 years, they did not have the strength to silence them. Fear had broken something inside them, something that might never heal. Other aggressive powers watched and learned. The Dominion, which had been preparing to invade a neighboring system, quietly called off the attack. The Syndicate of Shadows, which had made its fortune raiding shipping lanes, suddenly found new and legitimate business opportunities. The warlords and pirates and conquerors who had terrorized the galaxy for generations looked at what had happened to thee and decided that perhaps peace was not so bad after all. And at the center of it all, Terran space remained untouched. The boundary beacons still floated in the darkness, broadcasting their eternal warning. Ships approached sometimes, curious travelers or desperate refugees or foolish adventurers who thought the stories were exaggerated. They always turned back. The few who did not were never heard from again. But not all who approached came with bad intentions. They had been the first to establish diplomatic ties with humanity, but they were far from the last. Dozens of species sent ambassadors to Terran stations, seeking trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. They came looking for protection from the powers that had oppressed them, and they found something unexpected. They found friends. Human technology spread across the galaxy like seeds carried on the wind. Medical advances that cured diseases thought to be incurable. Agricultural techniques that turned barren worlds into gardens. Energy systems that were clean and efficient and did not poison the planets they powered. The humans shared freely with those who came to them in peace, asking only for friendship in return. It confused many species. They had expected the humans to be monsters, creatures of pure violence who wanted only destruction. Instead, they found a people who laughed and cried and loved just like anyone else. A people who built beautiful cities and created stunning art and dreamed of a better future. A people who wanted peace more than anything. But also a people who would never, ever be victims again. Admiral Al spent his final years in exile, stripped of his rank and his honors. He lived in a small dwelling on the edge of space, far from the capital and the politics and the memories of what he had been. He spent his days writing recording everything he had seen and learned about the humans, hoping that future generations would not repeat his mistakes. His book was called The Silence of Terra, and it became required reading in military academies across the galaxy. Its message was simple but profound. Humanity survived by being the most dangerous thing on their planet. They fought and killed and evolved and adapted until nothing on Earth could threaten them. And when they reached the stars, they brought that same will to survive with them. "Do not wake the sleeping giant," Al wrote in the final chapter. "Do not mistake their kindness for weakness or their patience for cowardice. They have seen the worst of what intelligent beings can do to each other because they have done it to themselves. They have no illusions about the darkness that lives in the hearts of sentient creatures. And if you threaten them, if you force them to fight, they will destroy you with a thoroughness that will make even the among you weep. Leave them in peace. It is the only way to survive." He died alone, haunted to the end by the memory of Captain Bishop's eyes. On Earth, life went on much as it always had. Cities rose and fell. People were born and died. Wars were fought and won and forgotten. The stars were full of wonders, but they were also full of dangers, and humanity never forgot the lessons it had learned in the long climb from the caves. Commander Daniel retired from the military after 30 years of service. He bought a small house on the coast of California, overlooking the Pacific Ocean, and spent his days fishing and reading and watching the waves roll in. Sometimes, late at night, he would look up at the stars and think about the ships and stations and soldiers that protected those lights. He had helped build those defenses. He had trained many of those soldiers. He had done his part. Now it was time to rest. Captain Laura Bishop became Admiral Laura Bishop, commander of the 1st Defense Fleet. She was still not a large woman, but no one in the galaxy dared to underestimate her. Her ships patrolled the borders of Terran space, silent and watchful, ready to respond to any threat. She hoped she would never have to fight another battle like the one against the... But she knew that hope was not a strategy. Sergeant became Major, head of Terran Marine Training Command. She spent her days teaching young men and women the skills they would need to protect humanity from the dangers of the galaxy. She was hard on them, harder than most thought necessary. But she had seen what was out there. She knew what they might face, and she was determined that they would be ready. Lieutenant Commander Cole became Captain Cole, commanding his own ship now, the TDF Sentinel. He still flew strike missions when the situation called for it, though such situations were rare. Mostly he trained pilots, passing on everything he had learned in his years of combat. He told them the same thing he told everyone: stay focused, stay humble, and never underestimate your enemy. Ambassador continued his work, building bridges between humanity and the other species of the galaxy. He was patient and kind and always willing to listen, but he was also clear about the limits of human tolerance. Friendship was offered to all who wanted it, but betrayal was punished without mercy. And across the galaxy, on every border, the warning beacons floated in the silence of space. They broadcast their message in 1,000 languages, over and over forever. "You are approaching Terran space. Turn back. This is your only warning." Some heard that message and felt fear. Others heard it and felt hope. But everyone who heard it understood the truth behind the words. Humanity was not a species to be conquered. They were not prey to be hunted. They were guardians, standing watch over their small corner of the universe, ready to defend it against any threat. They had not asked for this role. They had not wanted it. But the galaxy had forced their hand, and they had responded in the only way they knew how. With strength, with resolve, with the absolute certainty that they would survive no matter what the cost. The stars were vast and cold and full of danger. But humanity was ready. They always would be.